Hey guys, it's Drac, and this is a Nerf Elite Raven CS18, and I went out and purchased it so that I could work on this. A lot of my favorite blasters of all time, and my favorite mods have been videos where I've taken something that's special and valuable, but in really bad shape and just clearly in need of some serious love, and turned it into something that I would personally like to use, and boy does this qualify. This crossbow has seen a ton of damage, and I try not to be too critical when I'm critiquing mods that have been done quite to this extent, because I know that somebody did this mod and they probably loved it. They thought that it was great, but it's definitely not up to my standards, and I don't like the unevenness of this paint job. It might have been intentional, but it looks like a bunch of tape was left on. I don't like this orange crayon, and I just don't like the sheer amount of kind of trash and like hot glue mess that's in here, and we'll see more of that when we get into the internals, but it looks like somebody tried to use hot glue to resin mold the internals of this, and the fact that I can get in here like this just tells me that this front piece is trash. This looks like it's kind of gunked up, and the plunger rod is not in the best shape. The seal is terrible, and so I feel like I'm just going to gut it completely and do something that I've wanted to for a long time. I'm going to make the Nerf community's first clip system crossbow and turn this into something sweet so that I can use a crossbow for NIC Wars and now for HVZ as well. So without any more talking about it, I'm going to launch into the project. So we all know what a Raven looks like more like from the inside, and I'll show those internals when we start kind of laying them into this blaster and figuring out how we want all the pieces to jive. But this is the real important part of making this blaster into something special, and I just wanted to get a good segment kind of showcasing these internals, and frankly, sadly, this is kind of the nightmare scenario. It's just full disaster mode inside here. We have just this JB Weld kind of moosh combined with foam backer rod just mixed in with everything. It looks like kind of a chop shop rebarreling here with the original plunger rod but a new PVC plunger tube, and then a lot of the bracketing for the shell itself has been carved out. There's a random hole here for no reason. This is just trashed. And so it's going to be really tricky to get this into a state where I'm comfortable using it for the project that I need it to be. But I'm going to start just cleaning it out, which is going to be a long and tedious process, and see what's salvageable for future kind of crossbow mods. I'll probably keep the trigger and the catch at the very least in the spring, but by and large, I think that we're just going to have to completely gut this shell, which looks like it's going to be a chore. Oh good, here's another random hole. Alright, well, I'm going to get to work on that and see what it looks like when we're moving along. So this is our progress so far, and we're probably about an hour into just tedious shell cleaning. Wow, that piece came up really nicely. And I'm just kind of hoping at this point, with all the work that I'm putting into the shell that I'm ultimately going to carve up anyway, that it's all worth it. But if there's anything that I've learned from pet ownership, it's that the rescues love you more. So hopefully this blaster works kind of the same way. So our total shell cleaning time is clocked in just under about 2 hours, and I've only nicked myself once, which means that so far this has been a less painful mod than all of that brass I had to cut for the Lilith. So here's our Raven internals, and now we're going to gut it. So this is one of really the most, and let me try to get an overhead view here, but this is one of the most important parts to creating custom mods that haven't ever been done before, is really just visualizing everything, checking everything, and then laying it out spatially in a way that you understand. And my method might be different than your method, but this is kind of how I like to look at new integrations and kind of visualize them with all the things that are important, and then decide which pieces are aesthetically pleasing, where I need to keep which pieces, and then kind of how I want it to look and how I want it to function. So this is probably the most important part of this entire mod for me personally, and the next clip should show you kind of what I choose to keep and what I choose to scrap. Well guys, if there was ever a point of no return, I believe we've just hit it. Alright guys, so this segment seems out of place, but I couldn't think of a better place to put it, so I'm going to show you that I took one of the pins for the Endbringer's battery tray because I don't want to add another battery tray, especially externally. I think that that always looks really crummy, so I like to keep as much of my internals internal as possible. I'm planning on running the RM2 motors off of a triple trust fire setup, and then I needed to find a way to power all of the LEDs and the EL wire for the blaster, and so I decided to use one 3-volt here to power all of that. And it's going to be tricky circuit wise, but this is just the first part of that. So I went in and I carved this in half, and then I came in, it's easier to see from this side, and I melted a small hole here so that I can create a triple circuit by leading a wire through here and out, and then I'm going to use this prong here and the prong here, and I'm going to use that to create my my circuit for the lighting. So I should have 1, 2, 3 motor and then 1 light battery tray, and I've done that already here with these, and then I have to divide these as well. Actually, I don't. These are already divided, which is super convenient. So this should be ready to go as soon as I wire something through the back of this and out. Again, guys, always safety first. I'm wearing video goggles, but if you don't have video goggles, obviously standard safety goggles are a good idea. This is a diamond Dremel bit. It's a diamond cutting wheel, so first lock it, make sure that your bit is tight. The last thing you want is that flying towards you. Set your speed at something that you're comfortable with. Again, I would recommend wearing gloves. I am not. I have a lot of experience with rotary tools. If you do too, then you're welcome to use your own judgment, but I would recommend gloves for something like this. So it looks like diagonal from there. This is a good way to tell what you're doing while you're doing it, so you can kind of keep track. I'm going to go ahead and cut the segment here, but you can see more or less what we're doing, and I still have to come back in and get this, but we're trying to create a uniform carving of this shell. Okay, so just to give you guys an idea of how far into the bodywork we are, this represents about 10 hours of continuous bodywork, whether it's working with the putty itself to make the shells nice and smooth for the integration, or working my way from 120 grit sandpaper all the way up to 300. I like to be at about 300 grit before I paint. You can see that a lot of this previous paint job has been very difficult to get off, so I'm still working at that. I've got all of my labels and logos off. Everything else is nicely dusted. I did decide to keep this Nerf label. I think it'll look nice when I'm all said and done. And then over here, I took this as a good opportunity to repair this hole that had been drilled because it was pointless. I've come in and I've finished working on the battery tray, how I'm going to wire that up, and then you can see coming all the way through here that I just have a really nice smooth integration at this point that allows me to take full advantage of the foregrip. And then up here is where we're really having this problem. You can see that the original owner made just a huge gash in here, so when I came in, I've been fabricating just a ton of custom internals to make sure that everything is going to fly right. So this is a flywheel pack that I just have in to test, This is a long shot front gun barrel into the Raven's original barrel with 3/4 inch PVC epoxied over it as a sleeve. I'm going to do some detailing on the outside of this since it shows through on the eyelet, and I need it to be a little bit thicker so that it fits into the original crossbow post. You can see up here I had to come in and take a piece of CPVC which I cut to length and then epoxied into place, and then I'm planning on sanding over that when it's fully cured, but it's still a little bit tacky right now, and that just serves to kind of set this piece, which has also been custom fitted to the shell, up a little bit so that it's not leaning against either side of the shell, and you can see that's been mirrored on both sides. Then I've come in and I've taken part of, where is it? I've taken part of, I've taken part of the Crossfire bow handle from my Strifire mod, and I've taken that and I've used it as just gap filler here, which allows me to kind of hold this in place, and it'll have a gap in the center which will be useful for getting my wiring out through and up to the barrel, which is important, and you'll know why it's important if you've seen the overview video. But I still need to come in and overdo this with putty and then sand it flush so that it looks like the shell was never demolished. So if you buy your EO wire like I do, it's going to come in kind of a case like this. There's going to be the EO wire itself, then a board, which is inside this area, and then battery leads. So the problem with this is that it has this button system that makes it blink and adds an extra loop. So I've discovered that on these boards you can connect this anode to this cathode on the switch pin, and then it'll just work like a regular LED, so to speak, even though it needs this to turn it into alternating current so that it'll actually work. But in theory, we can wire it in parallel with the rest of our LEDs, and it should be really, really cool. Plus, it comes with a built-in quick clip. How neat is that? Man, this video is taking a long time. Hang in there, guys. It's going to be worth it, I promise. Alright, so here's the Elite Ravens motor setup with flywheels, and these are 130 size motors, but they are not good enough for this project. Normally, I have no problem with the stock Nerf motors. I don't think that there's a real issue with them, but I wanted to give the Endbringer power befitting its looks, so I have decided to go out and purchase these. These are 130 size motor replacements. They are known colloquially as RM2 motors. They're much more powerful, and they handle higher voltages and amperage as well. I've also isolated the one rev up switch that I'm going to be using for this blaster, so I'm just going to completely gut this system and then add these two motors and rewire them so that they should be ready to go, and then I'm going to get to work on the LED stuff. One of the original motors got trashed while I was taking it out, but this is what the original size 130 Nerf motors look like, with their leads and their attached kind of grounding cable. And then these are the RM2s that we're going to be putting in, attaching them to the flywheels. All custom shell work is complete at this stage, and it's time to go lay down a primer coat of paint. Quick and light primer coat, important to stay light, stay even, because there's no sense in ruining your paint job on the first pass. So after laying down a base coat of black on top of my primer, you can see that I've come in with blue painter's tape taped over the portions that I want to keep that black base coat, and then cut with my pocket knife all of the portions so that I have nice clean lines. And now I'm going to lay on a very special coat of paint that I've mixed for this mod specifically. So I'm using a custom enamel spray paint blend that should take about 72 hours to dry, maybe closer to 52, 56 in this heat if I move it into the sun and out of the sun so that it kind of bakes evenly. I am taking this clip on the second side, which took about 60 hours or so to dry, the underside, and then I'm drying this coat. I'll probably give it about the same amount of time to get to the point where I can touch it without leaving fingerprints, and then I'll string it up and do one last light dusting coat so that it has an even finish. But it's definitely worth it for that kind of like actual plastic enamel finish, and this is designed to look metallic, so it should be really sweet. You can see where I've taped it off is still holding up very nice, and half of that is the quality of painter's tape that I'm using, and then the other half of that is that once it's been coated in this enamel paint, it's really not going anywhere since it kind of hardens like a stone. So garage door openers are a really great way not only to suspend your piece and make sure that you get it painted nicely and evenly by spinning it, but it's also a great place to store it because you're already inside. You have the ability to open the garage door to let like fresh, hot outside air in to cure your paint job during the day. Then you can close it inside to keep it warm at night. And it also prevents like rain and things from getting on it, which is really, really nice for super long cure times like enamel paint. Alright guys, so after waiting 10 whole days for the paint job to finally cure, enamel paint is just insane, but it is so worth it. I've started putting together the wires for the blaster now. I'm going to do a separate video showing kind of how the wires work, but you can see this is the transformer box for the EL wire. This is a good 8 LEDs here and then 9 LEDs up here. They are connected with a demolisher style quick clip, which is great because it makes it very easy to remove. And they all go through a switch which is mounted through one of the holes so that there were no extra holes drilled into the shell. And then you can see that everything worked out swimmingly, where I have one battery connection here that leads to all the LEDs, and then there is still a main connection for the motors. So I'm going to start putting the motor assembly back into place, but real quick I'm going to show you this. And that is just too cool. Alright, well, I will get to work on the actual internals and I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. Oh boy. Alright, so at this point you can see that everything is functional and more or less fits. It's going to be tricky to kind of test fit this barrel in here, but this should be the finished internal segment. Everything has been rewired, and this was a chore to get everything exactly where it needed to go. These shells were never meant to hold this much. One last shot of the Endbringer's internals before I seal it up and test it out. Hey guys, this is the final segment for the Endbringer's mod guide. It's actually not quite the final segment. I will do a couple of shots of this blaster at night just so you can see how awesome the LED work turned out. I have a clip here with 3 darts in it. I'm going to go ahead and chamber that. It's currently volted on a dummy battery, 2 trust fires, and then a trust fire for the lights. So it's running at only 8.4 volts. So it's not getting its maximum performance, but it is sufficient for these tests. And that is more or less what it looks like in its finished form. I couldn't be more pleased with this blaster. It represents 60 hours of work, a great amount of materials, and just a ton of custom work here on the front as well as all over the place. The amount of holes and repairs that had to be made just to get the shell into a workable form, and then the amount of adjustments that had to be made after that point were just ludicrous. But I am very happy with how the blaster has turned out, and I hope you guys like it too. This is one of my marquee blasters, and I hope that you all enjoyed the build as much as I enjoyed building it. Thanks for watching. And Drax said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And I think it's pretty good. I couldn't be happier with how this blaster turned out. The LED work is just really, really cool. I love how it looks in the dark. I love how it looks both shouldered and in profile. I think that it gives the blaster just an extra dimension of awesome. And this custom project was so much fun to work on. I would just absolutely love any feedback you would have in the description box below. Go ahead and share this video with whoever you think would be interested in both custom weaponry and Nerf blasters. I spent just a ton of time on it, and it would mean the world to me if you guys helped me share it with the world. So, as always, thanks for watching. I appreciate your loyal viewership.